Experience, beloved, there are moments in life when God places his unmistakable mark upon his people. It is a mark that cannot be bought, bargained for, or manufactured by human effort. Experience. It is not a tattoo on the skin or an emblem around your neck. It is a spiritual imprint from heaven itself. And when you carry it, every realm, heaven, earth, experience, and hell takes notice. If you bear these signs, it means you are walking under heaven's power, divinely set apart for something greater than yourself. Experience. So how do you know when you are marked by heaven's power? Let me show you 4 undeniable signs. When heaven marks a life, experience. One of the clearest evidences is the presence of a distinct authority that cannot be explained by earthly credentials. Authority is not about how loud your voice is, experience, how many followers you have, or how impressive your resume looks. Authority is about alignment with the God who sits on the throne. When a man or woman is marked by heaven, experience, there is something different about the way they move, the way they speak, and the way they carry themselves. Experience. They may not have a title before their name or a position that looks important on paper, but when they speak, chains begin to break, fear begins to melt. Experience. And hope rises in the atmosphere. That is not human charisma, that is divine authority. You see, authority comes from presence. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai, experience, the people could not even look at him because his face shone with the glory of God. He didn't manufacture that glow. He didn't rub some oil on his skin to make it happen. Experience. The radiance was simply the byproduct of being in God's presence. In the same way, when heaven marks you, you begin to radiate with an authority that cannot be denied. Experience. Others may not understand it, but they will sense it. They will notice that when you speak, there is a weight behind your words, not because you are great, experience, but because the one who dwells within you is great. Think about the centurion who came to Jesus in the Gospels. He told the Lord that he understood authority. Experience, because when he gave a command to his soldiers, they obeyed without question. He recognized that Jesus carried an authority that was not of this world. Experience. And Jesus marveled at his faith. Authority is not about how strong you are in yourself. It is about who you are connected to. When you are under God's authority, experience, you carry God's authority. Heaven marks you by aligning you with divine order so that you become an ambassador of his power. That authority shows up in practical ways. Experience. When others panic, you remain calm because you know who holds tomorrow. When others are swayed by opinions, you stand firm on truth because you are rooted in the word. Experience. When others fall into despair, you declare hope because you know the author of hope. People around you may not even know why they listen when you speak. Experience. But the Spirit of God is bearing witness through you. That is what it means to walk with a distinct authority. But let me make this clear. Authority is not about domination. Experience. It is about demonstration. Too many confuse God's authority with human control. When heaven marks you, experience, you don't use authority to push people down. You use it to lift people up. You don't use it to glorify yourself. You use it to glorify God. Experience. True spiritual authority will always point back to the source. When Peter and John healed the lame man at the gate, they made sure to declare, "Why do you look at us, experience, as though by our own power or godliness we had made this man walk?" Experience. It is by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth that he stands before you healed. That is divine authority on display. Now, walking with authority will make you stand out. Experience. And standing out will not always make you popular. There will be those who resist your voice, just as they resisted the prophets of old. Experience. But the evidence of heaven's mark is not in people's applause. It is in heaven's approval. When you speak with God's authority, even if people resist, even if they argue, experience, even if they reject you, they cannot deny the weight of truth that presses on their conscience. Authority doesn't need agreement. Authority carries its own witness. Experience. Here's another truth. Authority produces boldness. When the Spirit fell on the early church, men who had once been timid suddenly preached with courage that shook the city. Experience. Peter, who had denied Jesus out of fear, stood up on the day of Pentecost and declared the gospel with such authority that thousands were cut to the heart. What changed? Experience. Heaven had marked him. The Spirit had filled him. The same Peter who once ran away now walked with the kind of boldness that could not be silenced. Experience. Even by threats of prison or death. That's what happens when heaven marks you. Timidity is replaced with holy boldness because you know you are carrying divine backing. Experience. And let us not forget, authority is revealed in how we deal with the unseen. When heaven marks you, demons recognize it. In the book of Acts, experience, some men tried to cast out demons by imitating Paul's words, but the evil spirit responded, "Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you?" You see, experience. Heaven's authority cannot be faked. The kingdom of darkness knows who carries the mark. When you are marked by heaven, your prayers carry weight, your worship shifts atmospheres, experience, and your presence becomes a problem for the enemy. That is the distinct authority that comes from above. So if you notice that your words cut deeper than your education, experience, if your influence stretches beyond your qualifications, if your presence brings peace in chaos or conviction in complacency, then you are carrying the sign of divine authority. Experience, you have been marked. And when you are marked, it is not for your glory, but for His. God places His authority on your life so that others can encounter Him through you. Experience, the world is not waiting for more celebrities. It is waiting for men and women marked with heaven's power. Experience, walking with the authority that comes from being aligned with the living God. That authority is your inheritance. Walk in it boldly. Experience, because it is heaven's signature resting on your life. When you are truly marked by heaven, opposition becomes inevitable. Experience, the anointing of God on your life does not mean a life free from conflict. It means a life that attracts it. Hell does not waste its energy on people who are going nowhere. Experience, if you are being pursued by resistance, if you find yourself under attack from directions you never expected, it is often a sign that you carry something the enemy fears. Period. The presence of spiritual warfare is evidence of spiritual weight. From the very beginning, we see this pattern repeated in the lives of those who were chosen and set apart. Experience. The moment David was anointed by Samuel in front of his brothers, his journey to the throne was not a smooth path of favor and applause. Instead, experience, it became a season of being chased by spears, hunted like prey, and living in caves. Why? Because the oil on his head made him a threat to the kingdom of darkness. Experience, the very moment heaven marks you, earth and hell take notice and resistance begins to rise. Experience, you are not just walking in your own strength anymore. You are carrying divine purpose. That makes you a target. We often misinterpret opposition as punishment, but in reality, experience, opposition can be confirmation. If everything in your life is smooth, if no one ever rises against you, if the enemy never bothers you, experience, you may need to check whether you are advancing against darkness at all. But when you begin to disturb the enemy's territory, when you begin to set captives free, experience, when you start walking in authority, suddenly resistance increases. The enemy's strategy is intimidation because he knows he cannot remove God's mark, experience, but he hopes he can make you doubt it. The storms that rise against you are not meant to destroy you, but to test the depth of your trust. Look at Jesus on the Sea of Galilee. Experience. As long as the disciples were just rowing on calm waters, there was no problem. But the moment Jesus gave the command to cross over, the winds began to howl. Experience. That storm was not a coincidence. It was an assignment. But even the wind and waves had to obey when Jesus spoke. When you are marked by heaven, you may face storms, experience, but you also carry the authority to silence them. Opposition may come, but victory is always assured because God Himself goes before you. Experience. Another sign of heaven's mark is that opposition often comes from unexpected places. Joseph was not sold into slavery by strangers, but by his own brothers. Experience. Sometimes the sharpest resistance will come from people who should have celebrated you. Do not be surprised when jealousy rises, when critics emerge, experience, or when even those close to you fail to understand your calling. Remember, light always exposes what is in the dark. When heaven marks you, experience, your life becomes a mirror that reveals others' insecurities and fears. Opposition may come in the form of lies, betrayals, or attempts to discredit you. Experience. But even those painful moments become tools in God's hand to shape you for greater purpose. Here's the truth: the greater the mark, the greater the battle. Experience. The anointing on your life attracts enemies, but it also guarantees God's protection. Think of Job. He wasn't attacked because he was weak. Experience. He was attacked because he was strong. God Himself testified about Job's righteousness, and that is what made the enemy seek to test him. But even then, experience, God set boundaries on what the enemy could and could not do. That should encourage you. When heaven marks you, opposition may rage, but it is always limited. The enemy can roar, experience, but he cannot overrule God's authority on your life. Resistance also serves a purpose in strengthening you. Just as muscles grow under pressure, so faith grows under trials. Experience. Without opposition, your spiritual authority would remain untested. It is the fight that reveals the fighter. Experience. David would not have become a giant slayer without first standing in front of Goliath. Daniel would not have displayed unshakable faith without facing the lion's den. Experience. Paul would not have written letters that strengthen believers even today if he had not been locked up in prison. Experience. The very opposition you face may be the stage upon which God displays His power most clearly. Sometimes opposition will not just come from people, but from unseen spiritual forces. Experience. You may experience unusual heaviness, discouragement, or obstacles that appear out of nowhere. This is because when heaven marks you, experience, you are not just dealing with natural resistance, you are dealing with supernatural pushback. But the good news is that you are also armed with supernatural weapons. Experience. The Bible declares that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. That means every scheme, every lie, experience, every plan of the enemy is subject to the authority of the one who marked you. So when you see opposition rise, don't shrink back. Stand up. Experience. Don't interpret resistance as God abandoning you. See it as proof that you are walking in the right direction. If demons tremble, experience, it is because you are carrying something greater inside of you. If the enemy is trying to wear you down, it is because he knows what will happen if you keep going. Remember this. Experience. The devil doesn't fight the average. He fights the anointed. And if you are facing unusual pressure, it's because you have unusual power backing you. Therefore, experience. Embrace the truth. Opposition is not a curse. It is a confirmation. The battle is not a sign of your weakness, but of your worth. Experience. The struggle is not evidence that you are forgotten, but that you are chosen. Heaven's mark does not exempt you from opposition. It equips you to overcome it. Experience. And when you overcome, the world will know it wasn't by your own strength, but by the power of the God who has set his hand upon you. When heaven marks a life, experience. One of the unmistakable signs is the presence of favor that cannot be explained by human reasoning or effort. This favor is not simply luck or coincidence. Experience. It is a supernatural endorsement from God himself. It manifests in doors opening where there seems to be no door, in provision arriving when there seems to be no source. Experience. And in relationships forming at the perfect time. Experience. Heaven's favor operates beyond the limits of natural understanding. It is a sign that you are under divine protection and guidance. Experience. That your life is aligned with God's purposes and that the hand of the Almighty rests upon you. Favor often begins quietly. It may start with one act of kindness, one opportunity, or one person stepping in at the exact right moment. Joseph experienced this early in his life when he was sold into slavery. By human standards, experience, everything looked like a disaster. He was alone, rejected by family, and thrown into an unfamiliar land. But behind the scenes, God's favor was at work. Experience. Potiphar saw something in Joseph that he could not explain, and Joseph was elevated in his master's house. Experience. This is how heaven's mark operates. It may look ordinary to the world, but to those who understand the spiritual, it is unmistakable. When heaven marks you, experience, favor finds you even when circumstances suggest it should not. Heaven's favor is often accompanied by timing that seems too perfect to be coincidence. Experience. Doors open at the precise moment, opportunities arrive at just the right time, and the right people appear exactly when they are needed. It is not the result of your skill alone. Experience. It is the result of God orchestrating events on your behalf. Esther did not merely become queen by her beauty or wisdom. She was positioned by God to save her people. Experience. Every favor she received, from being chosen into the king's palace to finding favor in his eyes, was a demonstration of heaven's mark. Experience. When you notice patterns of divine timing in your life, it is a sign that heaven's hand is upon you. Favor is also relational. Experience. People will extend themselves to you in ways they would not to others. They may go out of their way to help, support, or guide you. This is not manipulation or flattery. Experience. It is a supernatural alignment of relationships orchestrated by God. Think about how Joseph was supported even in prison. Experience. God placed him under the care of the right people who would see his integrity, elevate him, and eventually place him in a position of influence over an entire nation. Experience. When heaven marks you, relationships are activated for your blessing and for the fulfillment of God's plan. Experience. People who do not even know the full picture will become instruments of favor in your life. It is important to understand that favor does not mean a life without challenges. Experience. Joseph faced betrayal, false accusations, and years of confinement, yet God's favor was evident throughout. Heaven's favor is not the absence of trials, experience, but the presence of divine intervention in the midst of them. Even when circumstances look bleak, experience, favor ensures that your steps are ordered and your path leads to the fulfillment of God's promises. It guarantees that at the right time, the blessing will arrive and the plan will succeed. Favor also produces boldness and confidence in the marked life. When heaven places its mark upon you, experience, you begin to operate with a quiet assurance that God is orchestrating your path. This does not make you arrogant or reckless. It makes you secure. Experience, you take steps of faith knowing that your steps are being guided. You speak with courage because your words are backed by divine favor. Experience. You act with integrity because heaven's mark ensures that righteousness will be recognized and supported. The favor of God is not just about receiving blessings. It is about being equipped to walk faithfully in the opportunities God provides. Sometimes heaven's favor is a test as much as it is a blessing. Experience. It requires wisdom and discernment to navigate the open doors. Joseph could have exploited his position in Potiphar's house or later in Pharaoh's palace. Experience, but he chose integrity and obedience. Favor without obedience can lead to pride or disaster. Experience. The true sign of being marked by heaven is that favor always aligns with God's purposes. When you walk in favor, experience, you are not simply receiving blessings for yourself. You are positioned to impact others, to fulfill destiny, and to demonstrate God's power in the earth. Finally, experience. Favor produces influence beyond what you could accomplish alone. When heaven marks a life, doors open not just for personal gain, but for kingdom impact. People are blessed. Experience. Opportunities are multiplied, and testimonies are created that bring glory to God. Joseph's favor saved nations from famine. Esther's favor saved her people from destruction. When favor accompanies a marked life, it is always larger than the individual. It touches families, communities, and generations. So if you find that favor seems to follow you, experience that doors open unexpectedly, that opportunities arise without clear explanation, and that relationships and circumstances align in your favor, know this, it is not by chance. Experience. It is heaven's mark on your life. You are under divine protection, guided by divine timing, and positioned for a purpose far beyond what you could accomplish on your own. Experience. Heaven's favor is a sign of power, a mark of destiny, and a confirmation that you are walking in alignment with God's plan. When heaven marks a life, experience. One of the most profound signs is the ability to influence beyond what seems naturally possible. This influence is not a matter of human strength, intelligence, experience, or position. It is a supernatural effect of God's power flowing through a life that has been set apart. Those who are marked by heaven find that their words, actions, experience, and even presence carry weight in ways that transcend ordinary expectations. People are touched, lives are changed, and circumstances shift, not because of human effort alone, experience, but because the Almighty has stamped his authority on them. Influence often begins quietly. It may show up as encouragement given at just the right moment. Experience, advice that transforms a decision, or a simple act of kindness that sets off a chain reaction. But over time, it becomes unmistakable. Your presence alone begins to shape environments. When you walk into a room, there is a sense of peace, purpose, or conviction that cannot be ignored. Experience. This is the signature of heaven's mark. It is the power of God working through you, producing impact that you may not even realize. Consider the story of Joseph. Experience. Though he was in a foreign land, sold into slavery, and later imprisoned, his influence reached far beyond his immediate circumstances. In Potiphar's house, experience. His integrity and wisdom elevated him above all others. In prison, his discernment and faithfulness influenced the lives of those around him. Experience, including the chief cupbearer and chief baker. Eventually, his God-given influence reached the throne of Pharaoh. Experience, affecting the entire nation of Egypt and the survival of his family. Joseph did not rely on his own brilliance. He relied on the God who marked him. Experience, this is the kind of influence that heaven imparts, exponential, far-reaching, and divinely orchestrated. Influence is also demonstrated through the impact on people you may never meet. When heaven marks a life, testimonies are created that ripple across generations. A word spoken, a life lived with integrity, a faith displayed in adversity. These can inspire countless others long after the original act. Think about the Apostle Paul. Experience. Though he was persecuted and ultimately martyred, his letters continue to influence millions around the world today. This is the power of heaven's mark. Experience. Your life leaves a spiritual footprint far beyond your immediate surroundings. The key to sustaining this influence is obedience and alignment with God's will. Experience. Influence without purpose can be wasted or misused. Heaven marks you not only to impact others, but to fulfill a divine plan. Every decision, every step, every word becomes a tool in the hands of God for kingdom purposes. Experience. This is why those who are marked often feel a sense of responsibility. They are conduits of something greater than themselves. Experience. The influence they wield is not for personal gain, but for the advancement of God's purposes on earth. Influence also works through alignment with God's timing. Experience. Opportunities arise at just the right moment. Connections happen at the perfect time, and your actions produce results that seem almost miraculous. Experience. Esther's influence in the palace is a perfect example. Her courage and wisdom in a specific moment saved her people from destruction. Heaven had positioned her, given her favor. Experience. and marked her life so that her influence could extend to an entire nation. This is how God works through those marked by heaven. Positioning, equipping, experience, and timing all converge to maximize impact. Sometimes influence is unseen but deeply felt. Experience, a word of encouragement may plant a seed in someone's heart that bears fruit years later. A demonstration of faith may inspire others to trust God in their own trials. Experience, a life of integrity may model a standard that shapes communities and cultures. Heaven's mark ensures that even when you do not see immediate results, experience, your life is leaving an eternal imprint. Your influence is part of a divine tapestry that stretches far beyond what the eye can see. Experience, being marked by heaven also means that your influence challenges the status quo. It confronts injustice, lifts the oppressed, and speaks truth to power. Experience, those who carry heaven's mark do not blend in. They stand out. Their actions provoke change, their presence stirs conviction, and their words carry authority. Experience, the world may resist, the enemy may oppose, and critics may rise, but true influence is validated by the fruit it produces and the transformation it inspires. Finally, experience. Influence is a sign of God's power manifesting through you. When people are changed, circumstances are altered, and hope is restored because of your life experience. It is evidence that heaven has marked you. You are not just living for yourself. You are living as a vessel of eternal purpose. Your reach exceeds your resources. Experience. Your words carry weight beyond your knowledge, and your actions produce outcomes that cannot be traced to human effort alone. Heaven's mark equips you to leave a legacy that touches generations, advances God's kingdom, and glorifies His name. So, experience, if you notice that your life impacts people and situations in ways that cannot be explained by skill or circumstance, know this: you are carrying heaven's power. Experience, your influence is a mark, a signature, and a declaration that God is at work through you. Walk in it boldly, act with integrity. Experience, trust that every ripple you create is part of a divine plan that will continue to bear fruit long after you are gone. You are marked by heaven. Experience, and your influence is proof of it. If you want, I can combine all 4 expanded key points into a full, polished sermon-style speech ready to deliver as one continuous message. Do you want me to do that?